to begin answering the question of what is management, I would like to tell you a story. It's the story of Ernest Shackleton and the crew of his ship, the Endurance. In early 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton's crew found themselves stranded and sinking in the thick Antarctic ice. It was here that Shackleton would need to demonstrate key managerial traits. This ice was an example of a disturbance, and Shackleton would have to act in one of Mintzberg's managerial roles as a disturbance handler, the person responsible for correcting when an organization encounters an unforeseen difficulty. Mintzberg's managerial roles fall into three distinct categories: interpersonal, informational, and decisional. It's not clear what Shackleton's approach was to each of these roles, but in his ability to acquire the venture capital to fund and supply the expedition, we see a strong interpersonal manager, while in his ability to communicate to his crew that the ship was sinking, he displayed a more informational bent. Lastly, when we consider the rest of his story moving forward, it will become clear that he was a strong and quick decision maker, who, while not likely engaging too much in the analysis of his organization's behavioral style, was nonetheless able to make evidence-based decisions often. On the 24th of October, Shackleton ordered his men onto an ice floe where they would spend the next 6 months, a time period in which Shackleton undoubtedly had to balance the four managerial roles set out by Luthans: traditional management, networking, communication, and human resource management. Shackleton's goal was for the drift of ice to bring them to Paulet Island, where the crew could replenish their supplies. But after the floe landed them some 60 miles of impassable ice away, Shackleton knew he needed another idea. He ordered his men onto 3 lifeboats and began to perform what some would say is a manager's primary skill: leadership. Shackleton saw a difficult situation coming, and using the information which his experience and knowledge had supplied him, directed his men out of harm's way. Shackleton had used his own intuition to get his team close to Paulet Island, but he would need to utilize the evidence in front of him in order to take the next step. He directed the men to sail to the nearest island. This landed them at Elephant Island, some 350 miles from where the Endurance sank. Despite being on solid ground for the first time in nearly a year, Shackleton would still need to manage his way across Antarctica and back home, now without a ship. Shackleton would begin to engage in human resource management. He decided to bring certain members of the crew on his expedition, despite not being on the best terms with them personally. Shackleton and his 5 crew members set sail for South Georgia, hoping to make it within 4 weeks, as Shackleton realized that any more provisions would mean the crew was doomed. Shackleton's ability as a resource allocator, one of Mintzberg's decisional roles, was crucial to the survival of his men, just as a good manager's ability to utilize evidence-based management in their own execution of these roles is crucial to the survival of their organization. When Shackleton landed in South Georgia, he yielded a further example of effective management. By not spending too much time on traditional management, he allowed his crew to work in the places they were best, in the manner in which they saw fit. This is evidenced by the fact that without his navigator, Shackleton would have never made it to South Georgia at all. After he arrived at the whaling stations on the northern coast of South Georgia, Shackleton began displaying some of those interpersonal skills by immediately finding ways to utilize exterior resources for his team's benefit. The truest testament to this is that of the 27 men which Shackleton had brought with him, all 27 survived. At the beginning of this story, we set out to answer the question, what is management? The story of Sir Ernest Shackleton might answer that question best of all. According to organizational behavior, when times are good, good managers with the ability to create a rewarding organizational culture are at a premium. But when times are difficult, a good manager is a true asset to the organization. That's what management is, the ability to get everyone home safely when your team is stuck in the thick Antarctic ice.